Okay, as far as I can see, we have 45 participants in this moment, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah.
I think.
Now we should be live on YouTube. Yeah, we are live on YouTube.
We are live on YouTube. Okay.
Wonderful. So maybe we can start. If you would like, I will give some opening words. So good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone, depending on the part of the world you are in. My name is Margarita Skasenko. I am the International Cooperation Coordinator at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Santiago de Chile. And the 2030 Consortium, composed of the Universidad de Concepción, Universidad de Santiago de Chile, and Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso, throughout their international relations programs, welcome you to this third and last webinar of the Scientific Dissemination Program called Engineering Connection II. So the goal of this program is to strengthen and visualize the links between engineering and innovation to mitigate climate change in order to reinforce the cooperation and opportunities for interdisciplinary learning. This last webinar is dedicated to innovation labs to mitigate climate change, academy-industry partnership for success. And in this journey, we are very happy to count with the participation of our speakers, Judith Nagasha, Assistant Lecturer of Development Studies at Kyambogo University in Uganda, Dr. Fabio Cruz, Researcher in Polymer Recycling for 3D Printing at Universitè de Lorraine, ERPI Laboratory, and Dr. René Garrido, Head of the Environmental Engineering Program at the University of Santiago de Chile. And of course, the moderator of this journey, Waldo Soto, Director of the 2811 organization. Finally, we would like to remind you that the seminar takes place via Zoom webinar, which means that we are only projecting the panelist screens. The participants can send their questions throughout the whole conference in the Q&A section here in the platform, and they shall be answered at the end of the presentations. So let's begin. I give the floor to you, Waldo.
Thank you, Margarita. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this webinar. Today we have really great cases from all around the world, and I would like to motivate the kind of inspirations that we will hear, sharing with you like three kind of graphics, and I would like to start with that. No, just 1 second.
Okay.
We are here. Yeah. Can you see the biggest screen, or you are just checking the screen from inside?
It's the presenter screen.
You see the double one.
Okay. Let me switch.
Change switch the screen.
Yeah. Just 1 second. Yeah. So here we are again. This is the problem of having two screens. Now, perfect.
Perfect.
Wonderful. So I would like to motivate the dialogue and the conversation we will have later, after we hear also the inspirations of today's webinar, with three ideas. No? I'm not going to explain here what is climate change. I'm not going to explain concepts. I just want to kind of provoke with these images. First, climate change is about justice also. No? In this graphic here, for instance, we have in the upper level, we have the kind of poorest countries of the world in terms of income or GDP, at least per capita. And in this, in the left side, we have the poorest countries. In the right side, we have the richest countries. In the upper part, we have the countries that will be kind of highly more affected by climate change, at least in the changes of the temperature. No, so in this part here, in this zone here, Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, we have the poorest countries of the world, and we have also at the same time the countries of the world that will be more affected by climate change. In this zone here in the kind of lower right zone of the graph, we have the richest countries of the world and the countries that maybe the temperature is going to improve. Actually, no, it's like here in Germany, for instance, maybe we will have tomatoes in any season here in the future. No, it's like, and this is about climate justice. This is the topic about climate justice. No, it's like because the countries of the world, the countries that kind of took us to this point are the richest countries. No, we as poor countries, Chile or Uganda, for instance, we didn't contaminate the world, and this at this scale. No, so it is about justice also. Second point. Just 1 second. Second point is about how we are as different regions, we are collaborating or not. This is a graphic of a really nice tool from nature, where you can see how the research institutions are collaborating. No, I highly recommend you, if you're a researcher or you're doing your PhD, to check here what is going on. So who are the countries that are collaborating more, kind of research-wise, are also the richest countries of the world. No? And we, as kind of development nations or like less developed nations, we are not collaborating among us. And that's also a gap. No? So we don't have exchange of knowledge among Africa and Latin America, for instance. And maybe it will be more interesting to thinking on a solution for any kind of climate change threat from Chile to Kenya, from Uganda to Peru, maybe, no? And not that much from Germany to Chile, no? That's maybe it's a nonsense today. So also we have a gap on how we are collaborating in this kind of south to south way. And the last, and it's also the point that we will share now today, this is a problem, this is a social problem, this is a human problem, no? It's not the nature outside us, because that's the problem that kind of the mindset that took us to this point. It's also because we have to find our right place in the nature, no? So that's important also to mention. And we as a higher education institution, we have a place on this. And social innovation also maybe is a tool, maybe we don't know still, it's a tool that can take us to a different relation with the world. No? So first, we will hear from Fabio. We will start with Judith. Somehow I'm losing the, yeah. First, we will start with Judith. And Judith will take us to Uganda. Judith from Kyambogo University. He has been researching the intersection between gender and climate change. And she is also the lead coordinator of a future climate lab in Uganda. And she has been collaborating with us in different projects, also with Lorraine and also with USACH in Chile. So thank you for joining us today, Judith. I hope you can kind of give us some ideas of how you can kind of solve this gap, at least in the research perspective, and also maybe in the kind of human healing perspective. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you for sharing with us a bit of your work.
Thank you. Thank you, Waldo, Fabio, René, and Margarita for this opportunity. As earlier introduced by Waldo, my area of interest is climate change and gender. Really passionate about it at my university back home in Uganda. And I'm also the coordinator of exchange students. Collaborations would work for us as long as I'm still in that office. So now I can start off my presentation by sharing my screen. Okay. Here we go. I think this, I'm going to look at gender analysis of socioeconomic effects of climate change and institutional responses in the case of Uganda. And I'm doing this together with the institutions below, with the University of Lorraine and University of Santiago, with the 2811 organization. Starting off with an overview of where I'm speaking from. As you can see, that's a map of Africa. The red pointer is where Uganda is located. It is the eastern part of Africa, neighboring Kenya, Tanzania, and in the north, it is Southern Sudan. It is quite a landlocked country with a population which affects our climate of 45.8. And it is projected that by 2040, it will be 93 million, which is quite a threat. And yet our economy depends on agriculture. And this agriculture contributes 25% of GDP. This agriculture is purely depending on natural resources, and the worst bit this agriculture is rain-fed. Without rains in Uganda, agriculture goes low and goes down. And this is very vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Contextually, Uganda is experiencing significant impacts of climate change as we speak now. We have changing weather patterns, because in the past, communities would predict weather, when to plant, when to harvest, but it's quite unpredictable now. And we have low technologies to do that. There's a drop in waterfalls and also increased frequency of extreme weather events like floods, droughts, and all these have an impact, a socioeconomic impact on the communities which are more vulnerable. Currently, we are going through heavy floods and heavy storms, which is currently right now in Uganda, as we'll see in my other slides. And as I earlier introduced myself, it is climate change and gender as my passion. It is climate change is quite a global issue. We cannot run away from it, and we have to face it in this 21st century. And the impact of climate change on livelihoods is affecting men and women in the world. It is overwhelming, and Africa is no exception. The continent has been identified as one of the most vulnerable continents that are affected by climate change, and this is due to high geographical exposure and floods. Of course, debates are going on wherever you go. There are now debates on climate change and gender involvement of men and women in different areas, and sub-Saharan Africa is key, because if you want to apply adaptation strategies, we have to take into context gender, because climate change affects men and women differently, having the nature of unitary models as our households. So you'll find the poorest men and men are hit badly and their livelihoods are threatened. Why? Because Uganda heavily relies on climate-sensitive sectors, especially rain-fed agriculture. However, and on a sad note, we still have limited capacity to adapt to the effects of climate change and also the related shocks. The main key production areas in Uganda that are really highly affected by climate and weather variability, we have agriculture, we have water, which is also affected badly, we have energy and transport. These are the key 4 sectors that are really heavily affected by climate change. And with agriculture, since our agriculture is purely rain-fed, it is crops are affected. That there are variation in prices when it is like during long dry spells. There's low production in terms of livestock. Prices also change. There's actually food insecurity. When agriculture yields are really low, there's food insecurity, which contributes to which affects food consumption patterns. Because I've carried out a research in the western part of Uganda, actually partly I'll share my work. When there's drought, when there's food insecurity, the food consumption patterns change, and it's only 1 meal a day. And the priority are children, and then the next priority, the second are the men, because of the nature of the households. We also have water issues, scarcity of water drops. there's scarcity of water, drop in the water levels. It is a problem because when we go to the gender roles, of course, it's women that walk long distances to look for water during long dry spells. And we also have the energy of the sector of energy, which is affected. As in my first slide, I talked about the growing population of Uganda, 45% by 45 million, 93 as predicted in 2040. And this high population, it affects the environment. People people put pressure on the environment. And what happens? This leads to human-induced activities like deforestation. At the end of the day, there are emission of greenhouse gases, which affects the environment. And then we also have an issue of transport. Of course, since we are depending on agriculture as our main sector, when we have floods, roads are typically cut off. Recently, in many parts of the country, some roads are cut off. Even Kampala itself, the city, you will see some of the pictures as I'm going to talk about later. And then since it is, I'm looking at socio-economic effects, this climate change also affects the social culture obligations of communities, of Ugandans. And when you go to the social, communities live in a communal way, they share a lot, but when there's scarcity of resources, their livelihoods are affected, even the social culture obligations are affected in the long run. These are some pictures of cattle and crop failure taken from the eastern part. This is part of my research. And these are cattle, but of course they are not looking good. They are not well fed. There's no grass, as you can see. And then when it comes to crops, that's a banana plantation, dried up. But later on, when the heavy rains come in, they just come with heavy storms and just sweep away. There's whatever. The picture in the lower picture in the right corner, you'll find this picture. This is drought. And now at the end of the droughts, you see heavy storms coming with violent rains. They just come and destroy the plantations and people are left with no option. This is Kampala of now, as I speak, like 3 days ago, central Kampala. Roads this is downtown. These are floods, these are roads, and these are floods. People are just failing to cross because of the roads are flooded, maybe because of the poor drainage systems that we have. This is upcountry, trucks are stuck. Some of them are usually carrying agricultural products to access markets, but at times they can't access markets, and most of these products are perishable. So you find that people lose at the end of the day and their livelihoods are affected. This young man here is carrying his bicycle. That's a road, but he wants to cross over to the next end with his bicycle on top. We talked about deforestation that leads to emission of greenhouse gases. This is me, if you can look at this picture, with the engaging women in the western part of Uganda. And these women they were using charcoal. They send men, the lower picture, these are men that they send to the forests to cut trees and process for them charcoal. And then they sell to feed their homes. And the most energy used in communities, rural communities, it is firewood. You'll find every household with these trees cut from forests coming, they bring them to make food. And mainly it is the children that look for this firewood in forests and the women. So you'll find basically rural communities take up all this as their source of energy. And this one is also shared in Kampala. I mean, cities, they also use charcoal. Other homes don't use electricity and gas. When you look at the social culture obligations, gender is quite sensitive and dynamic. This leads they lead people scramble for the resources. If it's a meal, you'll find that at the end of the day, there's domestic violence in a home. Climate also leads to climate refugees, especially the youth, men, and also the men. Youth, boys and the men. When communities hit, they tend to look for alternative sources of income to other districts or to pre-urban areas or urban areas. And this leads to poor gender relations within a household. Gender roles are also distorted, productive community roles. they are also distorted because of the effect of climate change. And at the end of the day, it is women who suffer most. They carry the load. Children, some of the children are stopped from going to school because, I mean, you can't send a child to school. So these are some of the answers I got from focus group discussions and women. You can't send children to school on an empty stomach. So they decide to, like have a holiday, school holiday until the season is over where they don't have food, which is quite a problem. Of course, this takes me to my second section of my presentation. I mean, institutional responses and how do we respond as communities? How do we respond as institutions? Most of the responses to climate change have so far been focused on scientific and economic solutions rather than on the insight of human and gender dimensions. In the sub-Saharan African context, we need to focus on the research I have done. If we leave out human and gender dimensions, our adaptation strategies may hit a dead end. And the problem is women and men are affected differently, meaning that even their adaptation strategies will be chosen differently. Men will opt for different adaptation strategies, and women and men will also get different strategies. And this takes us to how do we get a better strategy? Because I'm coming in now as Kyambogo University as an institution of higher learning, how do we facilitate gender responsive adaptation strategies? We need to involve, we need information and raising awareness to our communities, all stakeholders involved in adaptation. We need to remove barriers to adaptation. We need to make available financial resources, installing and operating new technologies. I want to assure you, in my country, technologies of climate change and all the related, it is still low. And what the gist of this presentation is how communities, how institutions, existing institutions, both formal, because in our setup, we have formal and informal institutions. But once they combine efforts, I think we can build up both urban and rural climate labs. Kyambogo University is open. We have been interacting with 2811 University of Lorraine about how we can set up climate labs in our university. And this will be very helpful to provide weather and climate information, to innovate technology, collaborate with other institutions also, so that we may achieve technology that will help us increase our crop and livestock productivity. We need financial support. We also need good leadership as a university. We also need good leadership that will collaborate, that will work with other stakeholders, and also extensive, I'm really putting pressure on this, extensive climate change research uptake. If we can do that, share knowledge and collaborate with other institutions, I think we will get there in trying to achieve some of the SDGs. And when I was looking about how can we build an innovation club regarding vis-a-vis Kyambogo University, we have a research and innovation policy as a university. So it is under that policy where we can come in as stakeholders, as people passionate about innovating climate labs to support the integration of climate change issues into planning and development, to harmonize the approaches towards climate change resistant and low carbon development and sustainable development, to work with stakeholders so that we can, at the end of the day, achieve a green economy and sustainable development, look towards climate smart agriculture programs, send out early warning systems, promote and support climate change education. And of course, since we have an issue of water, we can also look into integrated water resource use and management, climate-proof infrastructure by conducting geotechnical site investigations, promoting proper planning of urban centers to have climate change resilient settlements, and also looking into the different alternatives of energy, especially renewable energy, so that we have that are less sensitive to climate change. And as I conclude this presentation, at the end of the day, we want to attain sustainable development goals. That is SDG 1, that looks into ending poverty in all its forms. Sustainable Goal 5, that looks at achieving gender equality and empowerment of girls and women. SDG 11, that looks about building up resilient cities and sustainable cities. and finally looking at combating action to combat climate change, which is SDG 13. And how do we do this as institutions of higher learning? For example, Kyambogo, University of Santiago, University of Lorraine, we should play an active role in designing and promoting sustainable, gender-responsive climate change strategies. And one way of approaching this is to set up combined efforts to set up gender climate change smart action labs that will help us build climate resistant cities and rural communities. I will conclude by saying, yes, I agree with our moderator, Waldo. We need climate justice and we need collaboration to help one another as people from the South, as people from the North. We need climate justice and also we need collaborations that will help us get more knowledge and also build up our research in the area of climate change. And I want to end by posing a question. How can 2811 University of Santiago, University of Lorraine, other universities, our participants that are viewing us right now live on YouTube, how can we support Kyambogo University in setting up a sustainable climate change action lab? And I want to thank you for listening. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, René. Thank you, 2811. Thank you, Margarita and the team for giving me such an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith.
Thank you, Judith. I cannot start. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for sharing part of your work. We know also you're doing a lot on this issue, on kind of also trying to share this problem also with other kind of research institutions. That's quite needed today. Mm-hmm. Thank you for this. For the participants, we have the option of posting questions for our panelists. So please share your questions, ideas, anything you may have, anything, a comment, feedback, anything. Please share that with our panelists in the option for the questions here. So we will continue with the presentations. Please hold their kind of your ideas. We continue with the presentations, and later we will open a bit more like a conversational space. Okay. So we would like to continue with Fabio Cruz. Fabio is a researcher from Lorraine University. He's researching the topic of polymer recycling for 3D printing, and he will share today a bit of the case of the green labs, a bit of these laboratories where some solutions are being kind of accelerated also. So it's interesting to maybe share, and also to know how this is happening and what we can learn about that also. Thank you, Fabio, for being here.
Thank you very much, Waldo, for the introduction. Well, the question logistic, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, cool. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much for the Consortium 2030 and for the invitation. This is great. This is great to share some experience that we have here in the University of Lorraine, and to talk about a little bit of Green Fab Lab and the approach towards a distributed recycling paradigm, and how this approach could be framed for the climate change that we know that is going to be a challenge in the next couple of years. Just a little bit about myself. Fabio Cruz, I postdoctoral research on 3D printing. I am in Nancy. Nancy is not far away from the east coast of the France and not far away from Germany. And I work as in the laboratory, innovation laboratory, call it ERPI. And this laboratory, the idea is to understand how to manage, how to create, and how to pilot innovation processes. Okay, So the question that I have here in this webinar is this one, is how innovation labs could help to mitigate climate change, and from a perspective of academy and industry partnership. So, okay, for understand this question, let me begin with the global issue, the climate change. What is the climate change? I'm not going to give a course of climate change, but what we know from the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change is that the target is 1.5 degrees. That is the limit that we need to tackle in this moment. And why is that? Because the thing is that according to scientific literature, almost 600 reference, initially this increase of temperature was 100 years, the prognostication. But today with the data that we have, we know that the expected year is 2040 that we are going to arrive at this point. And that is kind of questioning about the humanity, because we know that 2 degrees, the increase in the temperature, we can take tipping points in the ecosystem. For instance, the corals could disappear. And that is the uncertainties about what is going to be the impact in Africa, as Judith presented, but also in the whole here in Europe and Latin America. So that is the uncertainty, and we don't know. So in the ideas that we need to find ways to meet the needs, the needs of people, but knowing that our planet have boundaries. That is what is one point to relate. We have boundaries, we have limits to grow. And the thing is that the question is, can we continue in the same mental model? And what I say mental model is the economic model, the logic that we have today. And this logic is kind of the linear economy. So we're going from extraction of natural resource. We use this natural resource to fabricate something that we consume and that we dispose after that. And the thing is that in the economical view, there is an increase, if I can say, increase of the economical product. But the thing is that this material in the use of this material, there is a decrease in the quality, in the value of that material. Not only value, not economical value, but also the use of the value of materials that we consume. And the thing is that we know from research and from statistics that the main sector that consumes and produce the greenhouse emissions is the energy. And what I mean by energy is everything that is correlated with this industry. So going from industry, from transport, from energy used in the buildings, and etc. So the thing is that today the politics here in the European Union, the main motto, the main vision that is today talking is about neutral climate, a continent neutral climate. So how can we do that? We need to do improvements in each sector of our economy. And this is from the research side, is kind of intensive research about what could be a new model to transfer from linear to another model. So there is research about circular economy, cradle to cradle, social ecology, and there is many discourse. In the context of this presentation, I just want to focus on this one, on donut economics, that I think is very useful and is very interesting, the approach. And the donut economy is a proposition by Kate Warner from the University of Oxford and Cambridge. And they talk about, what I like from this model is that she presents a holistic view of the economy is not only the GDP growth anymore. So the basic point is to have a sweet spot, a sweet region between two elements. There is a minimal foundation of social elements that a country needs to guarantee to their people in terms of food, health, water, energy. But these minimal social requirements needs to be framed in an ecological perspective and to do not transgress the ecological resource that they have, including climate change, ocean acidification, air pollution, and etc., etc. What is interesting about this approach is that there is a group here in Oxford that is talking about how can we represent, how can evaluate to put index for this country, for each country. So for each item that we have in the social and in the economical element, we can have data about that. And what is interesting also is, for instance, here there is a research in Leeds, University of Leeds, and we can compare, for instance, the donut economy of Chile and France. In a first view, what we can say is that Chile and France have kind of a relation, a same pattern in terms of development. It means that they accomplish certain number of social minimum requirements, but the cost for these social requirements implies certain degradation of the environment in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus, CO2 emissions. And that is very interesting, because if we can do it with Chile and France, what about the world? So in this graphic, what is interesting is that we have in the y-axis the social threshold achieved, the social requirements obtained. And in this graphic, in the x-axis, we have the biophysical boundaries transgressed for this achievement of social requirements. So what we see is that in that point, we have France and we have Chile. So we see that they have a lot of social requirements, but at the expense of the biophysical transition. An hypothetical and ideal country that satisfies the basic need in long, healthy, happy life, but without the use the natural resources in a sustainable way, it doesn't exist. There is no country like that. So that's the point. That's how to reimagine the mental model about the economy, about how we live. Okay, so we continue with the innovation, how innovation labs to from a perspective of academy, industry, and partnership. What does it mean? We know for the literature that globally there is 3 ways of the production and transfer of knowledge. The first mode is kind of the basic research, the basic element of understanding that gives a minimal education for society. So elementary school, college. We have the mode 2, what is kind of research and science applied. And the purpose of this research is most of the time, I'm talking from engineering side, is commercialization, is the production of patents, is the development of technology for a certain purpose. What is interesting is that today we talk about in the scientific discourse is about the mode 3. And what it means is that we know that these kind of problems like climate change, they're very complex, and not one person can resolve all the problems. So the idea is we need a knowledge and innovation modes. And these innovation modes is most precisely how we can innovate or co-innovate with a lot of people together, how we can do it together. And that it means is user innovation, co-innovation, and the idea is to obtain this knowledge from the different disciplinarities for the integration of community and all sectors. And that is very interesting because it's not the normal way sometimes of doing science. And that is correlated today with kind of a concept of the quintuple helix of innovation. So it means that today the academy and these two, industry and government, is the main actors in the economy to develop projects for certain purposes. But the idea is, how can we integrate the society in this development of projects based on environmental issues? Because the thing is that is how we create investment in knowledge, and investment in knowledge of production of knowledge, and not exploitation of natural resources. That's what is the case sometimes, most of the times, in Latin America or in Africa. And that, in terms of us as university, we talk about the fusiform end of innovation. And the thing is that how we can conceive, how can design in the early phase of a project, how we can conceive the sustainable element. It means that we need to think about the whole scale. So we need, if we are going to have a product, we need to think about how the molecules are going to be produced. In order to that, we can use process units, and at the end, the impact is going to be different, is going to be reduced. And that's multi-scale analysis. That is the point, it's kind of challenge. That is the thing to tackle in this innovation process. And that is the point of my last and third element. So how innovation labs could help to mitigate climate change. So here we have the University of Lorraine. We have an innovation lab called Lorraine Fab Living Lab. And this Lorraine Fab Living Lab, the main idea, the main purpose is the complementary crossed communities of practice. The idea is that in a same space, kind of 300 square meters, we have researchers as universities, as laboratories, but at the same time, we can co-create with citizens and territories locally here with the mayor. And based on that, we can also companies doing also research investigation with us to connect also to design global, manufacturing local. So design with local international networks from the Fab Lab community, from the Living Lab community, from the community of innovations. And the basic approach, the three main elements, is how we can co-create with user involvement based on an idea. We prototype materials, we prototype ideas, and we evaluate. That is kind of globally the approach. And for doing this approach, we have certain equipment and we have certain facilities that is connected with that element. Going from sessions for creativity or open innovation, also with materialization side, and even with virtual reality to prototype and to test the prototypes that we are looking for. So that is my focus on one of the projects that we have developed. It's called the Green Fab Lab. And I think the Green Fab Lab is, as the name says, the main problem that we need, we like to tackle is the notion is the plastic waste. And this is the main problem that at our scale we are looking for to resolve. But because we know that only less than 30%, less than 20% globally, the plastic is recycled. And also there are the geopolitical elements that kind of doesn't improve the recyclability of this sector. So the idea that we have here is, okay, we are looking for a notion of distributed recycling via additive manufacturing. And the main idea is to tackle, okay, we have technical issues and we have logistical issues in order to create closed-loop recycling approach. And we know for the science and for the scientific elements that additive manufacturing is a big driver in the next couple of years in terms of technology for manufacturing. So this is a big player for transform the way we conceive the products. And for doing that, we need to do it in small quantities. And the main objective for us for the moment is the reduction of the landfill and minimize the use of virgin materials in our space. That is one of the initial views of the project. I'm going to talk about it a little bit technical. We have developed some conceptual framework. We know that for recycling, we need to tackle these 3 stages: the preparation, with the printing process, and evaluation. And the idea going from since 2016 just until today, we have working in these boxes in order to validate the 3D printing, to validate the recycling approach, to validate the conceptual model for logistics. It's kind of the research that this innovation lab could help. And we have an evolution from fabricate our own material with virgin material initially to calibrate, going to recycle filament, and the idea is to product directly from recycled pellets. But the thing is that for us, this is a little step. So we are in a technical system, but the idea is to understand the global system, because we know this closed loop is going to be embedded in a context with economical, social, environmental, and political elements. And for doing that, for understand the whole element, we are working with universities that join us in this effort. And the thing is that what is interesting is that the idea that we have is how we can take into account the environment and the ecosystem services in this recycling approach. And why? We know for the literature, we know for research that the current economical advantage of recycling is kind of a certain value, but this value cost for territory in terms of emissions, alteration of the ecosystem, contamination. We know also for our research that the economical benefit is not so evident in the current model. But the idea for us, and that is to try to see the whole system, the whole picture, is how the way that we can recycle in 2 kilometers or only in a neighborhood recycled plastic could evidence cause less cost for the territory. We can traduce this cost in advantage, in an economical benefit. That's the point to understand in a 2 levels. So we have a technical level to say, okay, what is the equipment, how is going to work the recycling process? But in a system level, to take zoom about that approach, is to understand what are the factors in terms of political or economical or social acceptability of this approach could have to foster the recycling approach. And in the same way, establish what could be the scenarios and the systemic and dynamic way to understand this approach that it doesn't exist yet, but there are hope that elements can give develop in the whole world. And also to facilitate, for instance, decision-making public-private actors to invest in this kind of ideas that could give a solution about this issue. And yeah, just for finish, I think there is a hope because the change is starting. I know there is a startup in Chile, Cactus, they are great work trying to do recycling for 3D printing. I know also for precious plastic ban, perpetual plastic project, that I have initiatives to tackle this issue. So there is hope there is the important. And also, just for conclusion, I think, so I just wanted to say that for now, for us, as a university, the thing is that we need a role to play, to act for the planet and for sustainable dimension. And that role, it relies to have a systemic and interdisciplinary vision. You know that technology, coming from an engineering side, technology needs to consider the socio-technical context. And for consider this context, certainly the interdisciplinarity is fundamental to arrive to speak with other disciplinarities to understand what could be the best option and to co-build solutions about the whole problem of climate change. We just for finish, we participate and that to inspire and to transfer the knowledge that we have. We participate in the Climate Lab project with Latin American in order to foster this approach and to create laboratories in Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil could implement this type of solution, not just recycling, but other kind of solution. And also we participate in other kind of European projects to foster and to disseminate what we have done here in the University of Lorraine. Thank you very much. I don't know if I took a lot of time, Waldo,
but we have time, don't worry.
Worry. Sorry if I took...
We can recycle the time.
Okay.
Fabio, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Is possible for the community around Nancy, around the university also to kind of take part of the project, or is it just for the kind of research team of the university students?
The idea we have...
open also?
Yes. The idea we have an association here near from the university to work with us about this recycling aspect. And also we are looking to implement, we know that the notion of Fab Labs in the schools and the prototyping space in the middle schools, they use technology related to 3D printing. So we can imagine how we can implement this kind of collect or short circuit to implement this type of solution and to give an importance about the recycling aspect. This is a work in progress, as always, in research, but the idea is to show that it's not a matter of technology. It's also to see how we can connect with other communities and other people.
Yeah, thank you, Fabio. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much. Dear participants, thank you also for your participation today. Remember, we have a section here below for questions. Please type your question. Can be anything, as we said before. Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me? I think I was muted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I hear you.
Please remember, we have the question section. Use it and try to interact also with the panelists we have today. So we would like to now to give the floor to Professor René Garrido. René is academic from the Geographical Engineering Department from Universidad Santiago de Chile. Thank you, René, for joining us today. René will share today with us a bit of how social innovation is kind of really entering to solve some of the most pressing issues on the urban life, on the city life. So we hope to get inspired after that for our life in the cities. Thank you very much, René, for joining us today.
I hope so. Thank you, Waldo. I mean, some people say that great minds think alike, so I'm taking some of the stuff that Fabio was talking about, and I will add it to my presentation also what Waldo was saying. Basically, it's very interesting that when you said, Waldo, at the beginning, that we don't collaborate like we wanted to collaborate with first world issues, or we want to go and solve first world problems and we have to think about a way that we solve our problems. And I think this kind of talks, this kind of places so we could get together and talk about these issues are very interesting in order to make that happen. So I'm going to start, well, you already saw that. I'm talking about social innovation in environment and climate change. One of the things that's very important, I think it was taught also by Fabio, is that social innovation is a powerful and valuable tool in the environmental sector. I mean, it involves social groups and communities creating and developing and diffusing ideas and solutions. So basically, the focus that we want to go through here is how we co-create solutions. It's not us. It's not people in the universities, in these big offices, or just all these things that we do. We just turn it into papers. It's something that we give back to the people, for the people, and with the people, which is something very interesting. At first, in 1930s essay in Nature, Ralph Waldo said that the nature, in the common sense, refers to the essence unchanged by men. Well, clearly Emerson wasn't right. Emerson said that nature was immutable, too big for humans to impact. Well, we said that's it there, and we did it. We actually took it there, and we have done great impact right now. So what have you done? I mean, and that also takes back to what Fabio was talking about with a linear economy. So we want to exploit resources and create products. And then what do we do with that? And the concept and the idea, the economical idea about that was maximizing gain with limited resources. How is that even possible? It doesn't even make sense. So it has to come to a way that we have to think, we have to stop this. We're running out of resources. So what do we do now? So that's why we have to start thinking, and then all this sustainability start talking. And then we have considering that not only was the focus on the environment, but also we needed to have an economically sound system. And also it was social. So, and then we have all the aspects of sustainability. But then I'm not going to go through the whole definition of sustainability. We've done this so far. But what I want to know is that we want to know that it's more than just environmental protection. It has to include what I was saying, well-being, economical well-being, and society based on solidarity. So basically, with that, the social innovation is the way that develop and deploy effective solutions to the social and environmental issues supported in social progress. So basically, we are doing the SDG agenda in connecting all these perspectives. So not only sustainability works, we actually, the social innovation is actually kind of like the framework, so we can turn this and make it into action. The sustainable developing goals is a pathway, but then the how is ours. And some people have said that social innovation is a way that we can make it happen. So what we have right now is that we've talked about this. We talk about who are the people actually that are making the change. And during this whole traveling time, there's a survey done. It was done this year, 2010, that it was basically focused on the sustainability leaders. So it was done between May and July of this year, and they were considering different representative sectors from the government, corporate, media, etc., and from different parts of the world. So basically, the question was, how would you rate the performance of each of the following type of organizations in terms of its contribution to progress on sustainable development? Shocking news. It's not what we're supposed to be doing. Well, I mean, we would want the private sector, the investors, the national governments to be doing something regarding that this is the overall perspective. But no, NGOs are doing the bigger chunk of it. Research and academic organizations are doing it as well, and citizen-led mass social change movements. So basically, what is this saying? It's saying that the actors, like the network itself, has changed, has shift towards different kind of leaders. So we have to know how the sustainability is taking place. And why do we need to do that? Because we have to create a network. We have to create a baseline in order to do it. It's not us. It's not just the NGOs. It's not only the social society, the civil society. I'm sorry, but then it's a conglomerate. So how do we do that? So it's actually taking place, and then reorganizing this. It makes it very interesting to understand that things change, and we have to move with that, because we would love to get all the national governments, all the private sector to go through that way. So how do we push that? So we have to help them, right? So basically, the second question that they did in that, this was really good, because the question was mostly on COVID-19. So what was the COVID-19 impact on the Sustainable Development Agenda? The red ones are the negative impacts. So it was basically the negative impact on sustainability. It was reduced in the priority. Of course, the creation of more waste, plastic. Then we have Fabio there, so we can help us. It will be very helpful to reduce that. But then it made it switch a positive impact on more attention in the environment, more focus on social issues, and then more participation, more awareness. And that's something that's really important that we have to tackle, because we would have to, with that, we have like a fertile ground in order to plant, in order to make it grow, right? So one of the things that some of the quotes that said, it was that there will be focus on the people first, some of the people that were on the survey. Now it's time for decent and meaningful jobs, leaving no one behind. So we've all struggled with what happened here with COVID. So that's something really interesting, how they shift in their priorities. And then I'm taking back on a slide that Fabio was talking about with the helix. So we have the triple helix of innovation that was mostly university, industry, and government. Yeah, it was possible to extend which innovation has become more systemic. This was done in 2012. And then it was a new approach that was redesigned, that we have to have a quintuple helix. We have to include other aspects of this equation, because it wasn't enough. It was the government, the industry, and the university that wasn't doing enough. And then when you compare this with a result that I was just showing you, it makes sense that we have to include the civil society, and we have to include the environment, so the sustainability, the sustainable development goals. So how do we do that? How do we connect it? But most importantly, I have to take this as the head of the environmental engineering department. The program, I'm sorry. It was that I have to see in what we've done with the past 3 to 4 years is how do we include these aspects towards social innovation, and how we include it in our new engineers, because that's something that we have to do. We have to be here for that. So how do we put them into an helix perspective to the newer generations? Because we have to make them, we cannot teach them the way it was before. We have to create a new way for tomorrow's job market, for the tomorrow's difficulties. So this is the top 10 of the things that we would have to do. One of the things is very important, because students don't know, especially about all types of organizations. They just know one thing. They're just going to go into industry. But then, no, they're going to be, especially when they work in social innovation, when they work in global sustainable development goals, is that they work for a wide variety of organizations in the public, in the private, in the social sectors. Then we have to start building important professional competences. Why? Because empathy, communication, multiple languages, resilience, teamwork skill, entrepreneurial mindset, contextual understanding, global patient work experience, ethical decision making are the things that are more important now. We have to start thinking globally. One of the things that we talk is that we act locally, but we think globally. That's something that this generation, the newer generation, are happening. So that way we have to make this into everything that we do. And it was very interesting when we have that, because the next slide, which is very similar, and that's why I think that this South collaboration, the South Hemisphere collaboration, is something that needs to happen because we have the same idea. When we talk about the environmental engineering here at USACH, when we have the waste management, I teach waste management as a driver, as a problem to be solved, we can connect and we have the system that interacts with the community, with the local government, with the industry to create this ecosystem. Why do we need to create this ecosystem? Because we're providing newer generation of students, of engineers, in order to have this quintuple perspective. They will work this and they will work on a safer environment. Why do we want that? Because we want them to be comfortable leading with these new ideas of these new concepts. Maybe we already have a Fab Lab. Maybe we haven't put a name on it. Maybe, so that's very interesting that it's already happening. It's already taking place. We're working with different municipalities. We're working with different companies. And we've developed a system that the students, they're not only learning about a topic, but they also are practicing. And they already have like a whole semester on experience in this with the development of all the new professional competencies that are needed right now in this new workforce. And now, this is the way that I wanted to finish this. I'm not sure how much time do I have. Is that I want to keep it this with a thought. Engineering should never put abstractions of calculus. And I'm sorry, I want to read it with you, but I cannot. You can read with me, right? Oh, sorry. Oh, I want to go back. There you go. Of calculus and physics ahead of the reality of the world around us. Desperately in need of creative and compassionate thinkers prepared to hear and amplify the hopes and aspirations of the most vulnerable members of our society. Where now we have to think about newer ways of newer engineering. That's something that's been happening in a couple of years. The humanitarian engineering, something that it's moving towards more than just numbers. It's not only about solving problems, but solving problems with the people. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much, and I'm ready to talk. I would love to talk to everyone here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, René.
Thank you very much, René. Just trying to activate my camera.
I will stop sharing my screen. There you go.
I'm trying to turn on my camera. It will be nice if someone in the controllers can make it. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you all for such amazing presentations, also insights, stories from different parts of the world. I just, let's see if we have some questions. Please, to the participants today, use the possibility is there to kind of share questions also with us. I just want to start with one question of one concern I have, no? And today is also like a difficult in a way day also for the world and also for the climate change crisis, actually, no? So Cristina Figueres was the last kind of director of the UN climate change unit, right? And she was also actually in charge of achieving and also agreeing for the climate agreement, from climate change agreement from Paris 5 years ago almost already. And she left the office, no? And she wrote a book. The book is called The Future We Choose. Cristina Figueres, she wrote this book, no? And the book was released some months ago. It's quite interesting because after all the experience she got, after all the experience like of negotiating with big companies, with big lobbyist groups, with big institutions and countries, she arrived to the conclusion that what we need is radical and civil disobedience. After everything she did, she arrived to the conclusion that what we need is radical and civil disobedience. As Fabio shared with us, if we can commit with the Paris Agreement, we are just in the direction of 3 degrees Celsius over the pre-industrial levels. No, the Paris Agreement is not taking us to like a safer world actually. So what she's calling actually is for climate action. We have a space still to put more, to deliver more. No? I don't know what you see, Judith, Fabio, René. I mean, also in the context of all the kind of changes in democracy, also governance we are facing today.
Yes,
what you see the role of social movement, for instance, on this challenge?
I think one of the things that we realize today is that citizens have a power. At the end of the game, it's the decision of citizens to engage in to buy or not buy something. That is a power that we need to get conscious about it. And the idea also with the, well, everything with the pandemic, we know that, for instance, we are here in France, the supply chains in the environment was kind of scary. And that make a decision for the government, hey, we need to develop local solutions. We cannot depend on external agents. From a geopolitical position, that is the one, I think is one of the insights. Because the thing is that today with globalization, we have China making everything for the world. And the impact, the environmental impact that have is very big. And the thing is that we need to develop through the social media, through the innovation labs or climate labs, to get conscious about the people, about the power they have into certain decisions that can influence on the climate. Certainly for Judith, for the context of Chile and René, it's very difficult because the context of France and Chile is not the same. It's really difficult.
Yeah, solutions have to, sorry, Fabio, just to give some space for René and Judith, maybe what you're saying is like solutions, they have to be localized, no? Yes. So many economics they are saying. I know, René, Judith, you have any comments on it? Maybe just a hint.
I agree with both Fabio and René, because the gap is big. France and Uganda, you can't compare France and Chile. You need to contextualize the solutions. And that's why in one of my slides, I talked about it's no longer scientific and economic. It's about human and gender dimensions, locally contextualized. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree also with the fact that, I mean, the contextualization, it's everything. I mean, we can talk about stuff, but then when we copy paste solution from like first world countries to developing countries, it doesn't work because you don't move culture. You only move a solution. So that's very interesting because you have to work, like, you have to start thinking. One of the things that I always tell my students, like, why we're so behind? Well, you have to look at them 20 to 30 years before that, because that's how behind we are. It's not, we cannot compare 2020 with 2020. We have to do it backwards. We have to create this gap, because that's when we start doing it. It's kind of like a history lesson. But then how would they build it? It's a roadmap. It's a good idea to understand some of the good and bad practices. But then again, you have to consider your perspective, your ecosystem, which is totally different. But I'm really happy that even though we have different ecosystems, we're developed some sort of a whole understanding that we cannot do it alone. We have to do it in a multi-partisan, multi-cultural way. We have to include all parties, which is something very interesting. The solutions are always all together.
Yeah. And also maybe understand, I mean, we are seeing today in the climate change fight and also in other social movements also, no? It's like social movements, they take time to crystallize, no? The first warning about climate change was made a bit more than 100 years ago, no? It was at the beginning of the last century, a scientific from, I think it was from Australia. He said, maybe it's not that good to kind of put so many carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, no? And 100 years after, we're having like a kind of massive social movement on this. We have a couple of questions also. Paulina, she's asking for you, Judith. How do you think, Judith, that the rural life can kind of be encouraged or promoted? How we can promote the rural life without losing global connection? So maybe, I don't know, what you experience in your context, maybe not, I mean, the research you're doing, like how, maybe it's a question for also the current crisis, no? Where we are just connected here in this Zoom for everything, maybe. How we can keep this global collaboration ongoing in any context, maybe.
I beg your pardon, Waldo, please, on the question. Please kindly repeat the question, Waldo.
Yeah. How can the rural life,
yes.
How can maybe we continue connecting the rural life with the global collaboration, with the global conversation?
Global collaboration. Connecting the real life to the global. What I can say is that at the end of my presentation, I talked about rural climate labs, because the context of urban, there's a difference between urban climate labs and rural climate labs. But at the end of the day, we want to achieve something the same. We want to mitigate climate change. So in that context, they work hand in hand. We have local institutions, we have urban institutions, and the two cannot, you can't bring something from my own institution and take it to the local community. So at the end of the day, it's working hand in hand. Of course, there's knowledge exchange. What I get from my institution, I can try to localize it in the context of the rural community, so that at the end of the day, there's mitigation of climate change. I think that is the whole global outcome. Maybe, I don't know whether it was what she was expecting.
Yeah, no, and maybe Paulina also, you can comment on that later if you feel you want to like more specific answer also. Then Camila Miranda, she's asking, and it's a nice question to kind of narrow the conversation down to the university or higher education sector, no? How universities can, and the different regions also, support each other in setting up like a sustainable climate change action labs. Fabio, you are working already in climate labs. René, also you are working in a lab setting also. Fabio, maybe you have
I think
some hints on this?
The thing is, one of the things that working in an innovation lab realize is that we need certain type of people. It means, I don't know if we have the idea that a researcher is someone that is only in the lab with machine, with microscope, and doing kind of weird things, try to understand something and write something. And the thing is that we need to understand that why this role of researcher in the traditional way is needed, because we need fundamental knowledge about the elements of the climate change. We also need someone who talk about that and can explain political way or stakeholders that are not only in the scientific parameters or rigor. We need someone also that enables the facilitation process to give a lab and to enable to work with disciplinary or the person from going in discipline diverse background, kind of the T-shape. It means that someone that know very well a topic or research, but have the perspective, have the zoom to the degree of, okay, what could be the global picture of a problem. And that is something that we actually, for the experience in the university, we don't work about that. Not so far when I was in the university, because one thing that René says in his presentation, we need to stop to learn by memorize equations or facts, because they are that, the facts, equation are the facts. What we need to understand is the concept behind this equation, and what it means, and what are the implications. We know that 2 degrees is nothing for us in a room, but 2 degrees in a global world implies a lot of things. So the idea is to try to understand, to develop competence, to develop systemic way of view the things. And I think that is one of the ways that the regions of the different climate labs can connect together in order to understand what are the roles that they have, and what are the communication, what is the knowledge that we can share. And that is one. We have the whole technology. We are doing virtually almost everything today. So the knowledge is there. The knowledge is there.
Yeah.
What we need to do is how can implement it, translate
Thank you.
this knowledge.
Thank you, Fabio. We have just 4 minutes to close. Thank you for that. We have one more question from Jaime. Jaime is asking, yeah, maybe René, Judith, he's asking like, if kind of is there like a right way to teach climate change in the schools, for instance? I don't know if you have any kind of idea or any kind of approach or methodology, maybe, no, that you would like to share. I would like to ask you to be brief so we can close also properly. Thank you.
I'll make it as fast as possible. We have different ways that we've done it. We actually have worked with schools like high schools, like prior to, because in the Ministry of Education, there's a whole climate change to sustainable teaching for sustainable development. So there's a space for that, and you can mix it up with the curriculum. The thing is, we as engineers, we know about the environment. We don't know how to teach it because we're not broad with the pedagogical tools to do it. Some people think, oh, you know environmental engineering, so you should know about it and teach it. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing to teach to a 2-year-old, 5-year-olds, 15-year-olds, than adults. So it doesn't. So you have to add pedagogical help for that. For students, I mean, at the university we have the international schools. The international schools have helped a lot in bringing this new perspective. It doesn't matter what kind of background you are. Sometimes you to just take a 2-week course. We are international. I direct the International School on Sustainable Development and Circular Economy. So we have that. It's happening actually. Then we can send the information to Margarita. Maybe we can send that to everyone regarding the one that we're doing in January. We're doing it all remote. But the thing is, you have to consider the extent of what you do. So basically, it's because there's no point of talking about how the atoms excite in order to absorb the energy, because you're losing everyone. So how do you bring like the language on a level that everyone is comfortable with? I think that's the tool, and then you keep adding. But then pedagogical help all the time, 100%.
Thank you, René. Judith, we have 2 more minutes.
I agree.
Any insight? Any insight you have?
I totally agree with René on his approach. Yeah.
Thank you. And also maybe we should promote more the systemic thinking, no?
Yeah,
systemic thinking,
totally.
Systemic problem resolution. I
think about the feedback.
Yeah.
Everything has a feedback. Plastic at the 60 was the solution for everyone, for everything. Today is the rolling of everything. So feedbacks.
A small game for closing here. Can you share in one word how do you feel about this challenge we have in front of us? How do you feel about the challenge of climate change, or the challenge you're having in your university around climate change? Can you share in one word how you feel about this challenge? Just a closing word for today.
Well, personally, I won't rest until I see a climate change lab in my university. It is just
wonderful.
When I go out in communities, it's too much. Yeah, I just want to see a climate change lab at my university.
Wonderful. I think we can make it possible. Fabio, your last word.
Last word, creativity, because the knowledge is a resource that is not going to end, and they can give us a solution.
Thank you. René?
Use your surrounding as your lab.
Wonderful.
That would be.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Universidad de Santiago de Chile. Thank you to the Consorcio 2030. And thank you for our wonderful panelists we had today. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, René. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you very much.
The best for you all. Have a nice evening. Have a nice
Thank you very
afternoon.
much, everyone. Thank you, Margarita.
Thank you, everyone. It was awesome.
Thank you. So that was a very great closure, Waldo. Thank you. I will give just some final words, and also thank you on behalf of all the 2030 consortium team. Waldo, Judith, René, Fabio, thank you a lot for your great dedication and your interesting presentations. So this webinar marks the end of the Engineering Connection II program, and all of our team would like to thank you, the audience, for your participation and for your great interest in all the topics that we have discussed in the free webinars that leave a lot of room for reflection for sure. We hope you enjoyed the program, and we are looking forward to seeing you on other occasions. So without further ado, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.